So Kevin Hart's super awesome 1970 Cuda gets totaled. The CHP is digging into the car to see what they can find. Does it sound like it's going to be a recipe for a big mess? Well, yeah, if it's in California, I'm pretty sure it will be. Step into the lounge and let's talk about this 1970 SpeedKore Cuda and what this accident may spell for California as well as hot rodders all around the nation. Welcome to the Gearhead Lounge, where we talk about everything that's Gearhead related. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and ring that bell so you're updated every time we upload a new video. So let's jump into it. So it's been a few weeks since Kevin Hart's 1970 Cuda built by SpeedKore got totaled in Mulholland. But now the CHP is going to take the car and tear it apart and see if they can find if anything about the car and how it was built contributed to the injuries. So let's talk about some of these circumstances. We all know Kevin Hart was riding in the passenger seat. Jared Black was driving. Jared Black is the fiance of the third person who was in the car, who was Kevin Hart's wife's trainer. She didn't sustain any injuries. Jared Black was injured. They had to cut the roof off to get him out the car. Kevin Hart was able to get out the car and go home and call for medical attention. We all know that the car is a total loss. I've heard rumors of people talking about Jared's driving abilities, whether he's a good driver or not, and honestly, we don't know. What we do know is that Jared is an actor / producer, and with his wife being a personal trainer, we know that chances are they probably make a decent amount of money and that they're probably able to afford fast cars if they want to. So Jared, who knows, Jared may have a McLaren in his garage. Who knows? But just because you can afford a fast car doesn't mean you're able to drive a fast car effectively. But to be honest, being that as it may, even the best drivers have had bad days at times. So who knows? He may have been driving in Mulholland, driving faster than his capabilities are, or maybe there was a road hazard and he had to swerve to miss it, and that caused him to lose control of the car. There's a whole bunch of mitigating circumstances that we just don't know about. My theory is that it was probably one of those moments where Kevin is showing off his car to his friends and they're all excited about the car, and then either Kevin offered to let Jared drive or Jared asked to drive and Kevin said, sure, no problem. It became one of those moments where Jared was like, oh yeah, you think you can drive it? Hold my beer. And then he proceeds to roll the car off the road down Mulholland. So it was probably one of those moments where the guy was he just had too much car and he just rolled the car. Now let's talk about the car involved. This car is known as Menace. It's a 1970 Plymouth Cuda that was built with a Hellcat drivetrain. It's a 6.4 liter Hemi V8 with a supercharger. It also has a SpeedKore cold air intake, custom fabricated headers, and made 720 horsepower. And we also know that Kevin took the car to HP tuners to have it tuned some more, so it may have even been making a little more horsepower. It's got full custom interior. It's got 19-inch wheels in the front, 20s in the back, Michelin Pilot sport tires. It's got bare brakes on it, 6-piston calipers. And SpeedKore is also known for the fabrication with carbon fiber. So the entire front end of the car was carbon fiber. We're talking the hood, the fenders, the bumper, the probably all inside the engine compartment was carbon fiber. Now frame-wise, I'm sure it was probably still a steel frame under there to mount suspension components and all that. That would be super expensive to make a car with a carbon fiber frame, and I'm sure they probably didn't go that far. But it probably had a lot of carbon fiber on it, which made it very expensive. Judging from the pictures that I could see, the car had a lap belt, safety-wise. It may have had a 3-point harness, but it really looked like that there is probably a 3-inch lap belt that he put on there. As far as lap belts go, I'm sure that's not the best choice for safety. It'll do its job as far as making you feel like you're secure, but we know that lap belts have been known to cause more injuries than the car accident itself. you can sustain a lot of internal injuries, and I believe you can sustain lower back injuries, which is what I believe Kevin Hart is suffering from, lower back injuries. Now in 1970, brand new, these cars did come with 3-point seatbelts. They were a little awkward, not like we know today where you just reach back and grab a strap and pull it across your chest and buckle it. These had 2 actual belts. They had one belt for the lap belt that you would click, and they had a second belt that was attached to the ceiling that they would unhook, bring across their chest, and click it into a second belt. And that would be their 3-point harness. Generally, when people rebuild these cars and make resto mods and shops rebuild them, it's up to the owner's discretion. Sometimes they ask for the original seat belts, sometimes they ask for custom belts, sometimes they go with the full-on race harness, what have you, but in most cases, it's up to the owner's discretion. Well, this car wasn't built specifically for Kevin Hart. He actually bought the car after it was built. So why didn't it have better seatbelts than what it had? Well, that's just the way SpeedKore built the car. They probably weren't planning to drive this car very extensively or anything like that, and judging the way the interior was built, they probably weren't looking to go any farther than just a regular lap belt anyway. So we know now that the CHP is going to take the car apart, and they're going to look to see if anything done to this car was a contributor to any of the injuries of the passengers, which could be anything. So what could be the outcome of this? Well, in the end, California could mandate that any custom restorers or custom car builders supply all of their cars with a minimum 3-point belt system in their cars. This won't be a problem with some cars, because we all know that a lot of these cars have been built in the 1970s and maybe early 80s, and they came equipped from the factory with a 3-point system as far as seat belts go. But if the car only came with a lap belt or no seat belts, you can't just drill a hole in the floor and attach a seat belt and expect it to work and expect it to be safe. These cars that have seat belts in them, they're specially built. They have anchors for the seat belts to mount to. So the second alternative then would be to install a roll bar in the car. I've seen 4-point roll bars installed in cars and a 3-point seat belt system welded to the side of it. And then the seatbelt would work like a normal brand new car, where the seatbelt hangs off to the side next to the door, and you just reach behind you and you grab the belt and you bring it across your chest and you click it into the clicker. When it comes to car builds, a lot of people don't like to have a roll bar in the car because they feel that it would ruin the aesthetics of the car. I mean, if you have a very clean classic car, sometimes roll cage or a roll bar will ruin it because you have to weld these things in, and they're pretty much a permanent fixture of the car now. So many owners opt to not have a roll bar or a roll cage installed. And on top of that, installing anything greater than a 4-point roll bar will require bars that stretch from the back to the front, which makes it difficult to get in and out of the car. And not to mention, there are some cars that you just don't want to put a 5-point shoulder harness type system on, because if the car rolls over, you have no way to protect your head. I'm talking about like those old school convertible, old school roadsters, like a Ford Highboy or a Shelby Cobra that doesn't have a roll hoop on it or anything like that. If you put on the 5-point harness and the car rolls, the only thing that you have that is protecting you is the windshield frame, and those aren't really built to support the car in any sort of crash. So that could be more dangerous than anything. And you don't want to use a lap belt in the car because, again, lap belts are known to cause more injuries internally than the crash itself. So what do those guys do? Now, being that we're talking about custom car builders, to be honest, if they really wanted to, they could install a seatbelt system in these cars and make them look good in the car, make them look like that they were built with the car, and they'll fit and blend into the environment of the car. But to be honest, that's not their job to do that. they aren't required to re-engineer the car for safety if they don't have to. Because to be honest, when manufacturers designed their cars for seatbelts back in the day, they spent millions of dollars and lots of hours crash testing these cars to make sure that the seatbelts are going to do what they're going to do. So to go to a speed shop and ask them to engineer a seatbelt system that's going to keep you safe while you're driving the car, you can't expect them to do that because they're not going to spend the money to do any crash testing or anything like that, and that's just not fair to ask them to do that. There are companies out there that do sell an aftermarket system to use some of the existing anchor points in your vehicle and create a modern 3-point belt for your car. But again, that doesn't work for everything. It doesn't work for every car. And on top of the engineering issue, there's also a liability issue. Many of the manufacturers who produce brake components and suspension components and tires, things like that, they can attest that there are super high premiums to pay for liability insurance to protect themselves should something go wrong with the brake system, or brake line fail, or tires should suffer a catastrophic failure. They have to protect themselves, especially in a state like California. Asking a speed shop to design and create a 3-point belt system, which I'm sure most of them will be able to do with no problem, but asking them to design it and mount it in the car and then take on the liability should something happen, that's asking a lot of these shops to do. So just to recap, the CHP is going to tear the car apart. They're going to look into some of the equipment that was installed and see if it contributed to any of the injuries of the passengers. And then they're going to give some recommendations, if any, for future companies who build cars. This may also spill off into us local guys who build cars out of our garages. So what's the end game? Well, we're still waiting. Obviously, they haven't completely turned to the car yet. This is going to take a lot of time. This may take years for them to come up with any legislation, if any. Keep in mind, we are talking about California. It seems like when it comes to the automotive lifestyle, anything California does legislatively is always detrimental to the lifestyle of the automotive enthusiast, regardless of if we're right or not. So if they're going to handle this any way close to the way they handled the smog laws, these safety laws that they're going to come up with most likely are going to be riddled with red tape to wade through, full of regulations that will be written by non-car enthusiasts. They will most likely be confusing and nonsensical. They will carry with them a ton of fees and have zero consistency. So let's continue to keep an eye out on what's going to be happening with this legislation. This could affect the entire automotive aftermarket as well as the hobby that we all enjoy so much as being car enthusiasts. I would say keep an eye on what's going on by keeping up with SEMA, SEMA.org, and look at their legislative news, and they may have some updates. Right now, they don't have anything on the website, but I would say just continue to check with that. But until we hear anything more, we're just going to have to sit tight. That's going to be it for today. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you're updated every time a new video is uploaded to the Gearhead Lounge. We're still working on lots of things. I'm almost finished with my GT350 video for 1966, and we're also working on some other things as well. All right, thanks a lot. Take care.